Is it possible that pain, the very thing you've been trying to escape, might actually be the doorway to the deepest grace you've ever known? Saint Teresa of Avila, the great mystic and doctor of the Church, discovered something that contradicts every instinct of your human nature. God is never closer than when your soul is suffering. This isn't poetry. This is spiritual warfare wisdom, forged in the crucible of her own agonizing trials. And today, you're going to discover the 3 hidden graces that flow through suffering, even when your heart screams why and your mind finds no answers. You've been taught that pain means something went wrong, that suffering signals God's absence, that if you were truly blessed, truly loved, the cross would pass you by. But what if everything you believed about pain was backwards? Saint Teresa endured decades of physical illness, spiritual abandonment, fierce persecution from her own religious community, and dark nights of the soul so intense she wondered if God had forgotten her name. Yet in those very depths, she found treasures that changed her forever. Not explanations, not escape routes, but graces so profound they transformed her into one of the greatest saints in church history. Right now, as you listen to these words, you might be carrying your own pain, an illness that won't heal, a betrayal that still burns, a prayer that seems to echo into emptiness, financial ruin, broken relationships, dreams that died too young. And you've asked the question that never gets answered. Why me? Where is God in this? What if the answer isn't an explanation at all? What if God is doing something in your suffering that your rational mind cannot grasp, but your spirit desperately needs? This isn't about making pain beautiful. Pain is real, brutal, and often senseless to human eyes. But Saint Teresa learned to see with different eyes. She discovered that when God permits suffering, He never wastes a single tear. Every ache, every confusion, every moment when faith feels like gripping smoke, God is working a mysterious alchemy. He's purifying, deepening, uniting. And the 3 graces He gives through pain are so valuable that the angels themselves cannot receive them, because angels do not suffer. Only you can. Are you ready to see what Saint Teresa saw? Then let your heart be still, because what follows will challenge everything you thought you knew about pain and presence. The first and most devastating mistake you can make is believing that suffering means abandonment. Your mind screams it. If God loved me, this wouldn't be happening. Your emotions confirm it. I feel nothing. He must be gone. Every spiritual book you've read seems to promise that faith brings peace, yet here you are, faithful and shattered. Where is the God who promised to never leave? Saint Teresa would look you in the eye and say with absolute certainty, He has never been closer. When consolations disappear, when every spiritual feeling evaporates, when prayer becomes a desert march with no oasis in sight, God is not distant. He is teaching your soul to love Him with a purer love than you've ever known. Think about it. When everything in your life is flowing smoothly, when prayers feel warm and answered, when your faith brings immediate comfort, who are you really loving? Are you loving God? Or are you loving what God gives you? Saint Teresa understood the difference. She wrote that God sometimes removes His consoling presence precisely because He trusts you enough to form you into something greater. It's like a father teaching a child to walk. At first, he holds the child's hands constantly, but eventually, if the child is to truly walk, the father must let go. The child feels abandoned in that moment, but the father hasn't left. He simply stepped back, arms still ready, watching with fierce love as the child learns to stand on legs that are stronger than they were before. Your pain is not proof that God rejected you. Often it's proof that He chose you for deeper intimacy. This sounds insane to the logical mind. How can suffering be a sign of divine favor? But look at the pattern throughout Scripture and the lives of the saints. Who did God refine in the fire? Moses in the wilderness, Job in his losses, David in his exile, Mary at the foot of the cross, and Teresa herself, racked with illness for years, misunderstood by her superiors, fighting spiritual battles in the dark. These weren't the forgotten ones. These were the ones God was preparing for missions that required souls forged in flame. When you're in the middle of pain, you cannot see this. All you can see is the darkness. All you can feel is the weight. And that's exactly the point. God is not asking you to understand. He's asking you to trust. He's asking you to believe against every visible evidence that He is near, that He has not forgotten, that this moment, as unbearable as it feels, is not the end of your story. It's the chapter where your faith becomes real, where your love for God stops being transactional and becomes sacrificial. Saint Teresa called this naked faith, faith stripped of every comfort, standing alone in the dark with nothing but an invisible promise. And she said it's the most precious gift a soul can give to God. The second grace is perhaps the most painful to receive, yet the most necessary. True humility. Not the false humility that says pretty words about being unworthy while secretly believing you've got it all together. Not the performative humility that posts humble-sounding things online while your heart swells with pride. True humility. The kind that shatters your illusions. The kind that reveals how desperately you need God for literally everything. How did you think you'd learn that lesson? Did you think humility comes from reading about it? From agreeing with sermons? No. Real humility is carved into your bones by experiences that prove beyond doubt that you are not in control, you are not self-sufficient, and you cannot save yourself. Pain strips away pretense. When you're suffering, you can't hide behind your achievements, your reputation, your strengths. They all become irrelevant. Illness doesn't care about your resume. Grief doesn't care about your social status. Spiritual desolation doesn't care how many prayers you've memorized. You are reduced to your essence, a created being, utterly dependent, standing before the Creator with empty hands. And in that terrifying nakedness, grace floods in. Because pride, that ancient enemy of the soul, cannot coexist with acknowledged need. When pain forces you to cry out, "I can't do this alone," you've just opened a door that pride had sealed shut. Saint Teresa observed this pattern repeatedly in her own life and in those she guided spiritually. She noticed that God often allows certain suffering specifically to demolish the hidden structures of pride that we don't even know we're building. You might think you're humble because you don't boast. But are you relying on your own wisdom, your own strength, your own ability to maintain your spiritual life? Those invisible dependencies are forms of pride. And God, who loves you too much to let you stay trapped in self-reliance, will sometimes remove the very things you were leaning on, not to punish you, to save you from yourself. The breaking is mercy. When your certainties crumble, when your plans fail, when the things you thought made you worthy are revealed as insufficient, when you face your own weakness, your own darkness, your own inability to fix even your own soul, this is not defeat. This is liberation. Because the soul that knows it needs God in everything, constantly, desperately, is the soul that receives everything. Pride closes the hand into a fist. Humility opens it to receive. And what God pours into an open, humble hand is limitless. So if pain is teaching you that you are small, fragile, and completely dependent on grace, don't resist the lesson. This is the grace of humility, and it's worth more than every false strength you thought you had. Now we come to the deepest grace, the one that makes sense of all suffering, union with Christ crucified. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't spiritual poetry designed to make you feel better. This is the actual structure of Christian life. Saint Teresa understood with crystalline clarity what most Christians miss. You cannot be united to Christ without sharing his cross. You cannot claim to follow him and expect to walk a different path than he walked. He suffered. Therefore, if you love him, if you truly want to be close to him, suffering will find you. not because God is cruel, but because the cross is where the deepest love in the universe was revealed. Think about what happened on Calvary. God himself, in human flesh, experienced abandonment. My God, why have you forsaken me? He knows what it feels like when heaven is silent. He knows what it feels like to suffer without understanding why. He knows the crushing weight of physical pain, emotional betrayal, spiritual desolation. And when you suffer, you are not suffering alone. You are suffering with him. Your pain connects you to his pain. Your confusion echoes his question. Your tears fall where his blood fell. This is mystical union at its most intimate. You and Christ, together in the place where love is tested and proven. Saint Teresa would often meditate on the Passion, not as a distant historical event, but as a present reality she could enter. She understood that when she offered her pain to God, when she united her suffering to Christ's suffering, something supernatural occurred. Her pain was no longer just hers. It became part of the redemptive work of the cross. It gained meaning. It gained power. It gained the ability to intercede for others, to bring grace into the world, to participate in the salvation of souls. This is the mystery Paul spoke of when he wrote, "I fill up in my flesh what is lacking in Christ's afflictions." Not because Christ's sacrifice was insufficient, but because he invites us to share in it, to make our own suffering an offering joined to his. When you suffer with Christ, when you consciously unite your pain to his, everything changes. The suffering doesn't necessarily diminish in intensity, but it transforms in meaning. It stops being random chaos and becomes sacred offering. It stops being punishment and becomes partnership with God in the work of redemption. Teresa discovered that a single moment of pain offered in love, joined to the cross, has more spiritual power than years of easy devotion. Because in that moment, you are not just talking about love, you are embodying it. You are loving God not for what he gives, but for who he is. You are loving him the way he loved you, through suffering, through sacrifice, through the willingness to give everything with no guarantee of feeling anything in return. These three graces, purification of love, true humility, and union with Christ, do not often announce themselves with fanfare. You will not necessarily feel them working. Saint Teresa warned about this repeatedly. The deepest graces operate in silence. They transform you beneath the surface of consciousness. You might spend months, even years, suffering without any sense that something good is happening. And then, one day, you'll look back and realize you're different. Stronger in ways that have nothing to do with never falling. More humble in ways that feel like bedrock truth, rather than performance. More united to Christ in ways that make everything else feel less urgent, less consuming, less capable of shaking your foundation. What you call the absence of grace might actually be grace working at depths you cannot perceive. Think about a seed buried in dark soil. From the seed's perspective, if it could think, it would feel buried alive, surrounded by darkness, pressed on every side, unable to see light, feeling only the slow dissolution of its old form. Is the seed being destroyed, or is it being transformed? Only time reveals the answer. And when the shoot breaks through the soil, when the plant rises toward the sun, the seed's suffering was not wasted. It was absolutely necessary for the life that followed. Your suffering right now might feel like death, like burial, like the end of everything. But what if it's actually the beginning? What if God is dissolving your old self, your old ways of relating to him, your old dependencies and illusions, so that something new can grow? Saint Teresa would tell you that the greatest spiritual growth often happens in the times when you feel the least spiritual, when prayer is dry, when you feel nothing, when you show up anyway, day after day, with no reward except the decision itself. That kind of faithfulness, that kind of love, that's what moves the heart of God. Don't demand to feel the grace. Don't insist on understanding the purpose. Don't give up because you can't see the results. Just stay. Just trust. Just keep offering your pain to God, even when it feels like you're offering it into a void. Because God is not a void. He is infinite love, infinite wisdom, infinite power. And He is using your suffering in ways that will only make sense when you see them from eternity. For now, all you need to know is that nothing, absolutely nothing, is wasted when it's placed in His hands. There's a question that haunts everyone who suffers. When will this end? And the honest answer is, you don't know. Some suffering ends quickly. Some lingers for years. Some follows you to the grave. Saint Teresa herself never fully escaped physical pain, but she did discover something that changed everything. Pain is not the final word. It's a chapter, a season, a passage. Even when it lasts a lifetime, it's temporary compared to eternity. And the graces received through suffering, those are permanent. Those you carry forever. This is what makes Christian suffering different from every other philosophy's approach to pain. Buddhism says suffering comes from desire, so eliminate desire. Stoicism says suffering comes from wrong thinking, so control your thoughts. Modern culture says suffering is meaningless, so medicate it, distract from it, deny it. But Christianity says suffering is real, it's painful, it's often inexplicable, and God can redeem it, not explain it away, not make it pleasant, redeem it, transform it, use it for purposes so glorious that one day you will thank Him for allowing it. Does that sound impossible right now? Does it sound offensive? Good. That means you're taking this seriously, not treating it like cheap comfort. Saint Teresa never offered cheap comfort. She offered truth. Hard truth. Truth that doesn't make sense until you live it. She would tell you that if you're angry at God right now, tell Him. If you don't understand, confess that too. If you feel abandoned, cry it out in His presence. He can handle your honesty. What He cannot work with is pretense. What He cannot enter is a heart that's closed, defended, refusing to let Him near because of fear or bitterness or disbelief. The promise is not that you'll understand soon. The promise is that God is faithful, that He keeps His word, that He never permits suffering without purpose, even when the purpose remains hidden until heaven. Your job is not to figure it out. Your job is to trust, to remain, to keep choosing love, even when love feels like ashes in your mouth. And if you can do that, if you can walk through this dark valley clinging to nothing but God's invisible hand, you will emerge different, not unscathed, not undamaged, but transformed, refined, deeper, stronger in the ways that actually matter. Pain does not have the final word in your story. Death does not have the final word. Confusion does not have the final word. The final word belongs to God, and His final word is always love, always redemption, always resurrection. The cross was not the end for Christ. It was the doorway to glory. And your cross, whatever form it takes, is not your end either. It's your participation in the mystery of dying and rising. It's your share in the passion that leads to the resurrection. Saint Teresa lived this truth. She died in it. And she's inviting you to believe it too. So here's what you do with this teaching. You don't try to make yourself suffer more. You don't romanticize pain or seek it out. That's not what Saint Teresa taught. What you do is this. When suffering comes, and it will come because you're human, and this is a broken world, you receive it differently. You don't receive it as punishment. You don't receive it as proof that God forgot you. You receive it as a strange and terrible gift, an invitation into depths of grace you could never access through comfort alone. You whisper, even through tears, God, I don't understand this, but I trust you. Take this pain. Unite it to the cross. Let it not be wasted. Purify my love. Teach me humility. Join me to your Son. And when this is over, let me be yours in ways I've never been before. That prayer, that surrender, That's how suffering becomes grace. Not by understanding it, not by enjoying it, but by offering it, by trusting that the God who allowed it is the same God who can redeem it. Saint Teresa proved this truth with her life. She went into suffering confused and came out transformed. She went in broken and came out whole in ways that transcend human wholeness. She went in alone and came out united to Christ in a bond that nothing could sever. And what he did for her, he will do for you, if you let him. This is not the end of pain. This is the transformation of it. This is not the answer to why. This is the offer of who. God himself, reaching through your suffering, not to explain it, but to hold you in it, not to remove it prematurely, but to make it meaningful, not to make it hurt less, but to make it matter more. That's the paradox of Christian suffering. It still hurts, but it hurts with purpose, with presence, with the quiet assurance that even this, even your darkest moment, is wrapped in the care of a God who suffered too, who knows, who remembers, and who is making all things new. So as you face whatever pain awaits you tomorrow, or the pain you're carrying today, remember Saint Teresa's wisdom. Remember the 3 graces: love purified of self-interest, humility born from acknowledged weakness, and union with Christ in his redemptive suffering. These graces do not advertise themselves. They work quietly, but they work truly. And one day, when you see God face to face, when the veil is lifted and you understand at last, you will see that every tear you cried in faith was caught. Every prayer you whispered in darkness was heard. Every moment you chose to trust, when trust felt impossible, was treasured. Pain is not your enemy when it's placed in God's hands. It's your teacher, your refiner, your doorway to graces you could never earn and would never choose, but desperately need. Saint Teresa walked this path before you. She stumbled, she questioned, she wept, she doubted, and she emerged victorious, not because pain stopped, but because God proved faithful through all of it. The same God who carried her will carry you. The same grace that transformed her is offered to you. The same love that sustained her is sustaining you right now, even if you cannot feel it, even if you cannot see it, even if all you can do is whisper into the darkness, "I believe. Help my unbelief." That whisper is enough. That broken faith is enough. That confused trust is enough. Because God does not measure your love by how strong you feel or how much you understand. He measures it by your willingness to stay, to remain, to keep showing up when showing up is all you can do. And if you can do that, if you can stand in your pain and refuse to let it make you cynical, refuse to let it convince you that God is absent, refuse to let it steal the deepest truth you know, which is that you are loved beyond measure, then you have already received the grace. You are already being transformed. You are already becoming who God created you to be. In the silence where words fail, in the darkness where sight ends, in the pain where understanding cannot reach, there is still God, still grace, still love working beneath the surface of your awareness, shaping you into something beautiful, something eternal, something that reflects the face of Christ himself. This is what Saint Teresa discovered. This is what she lived, and this is what she's telling you across the centuries. Do not be afraid of your pain. Offer it, trust through it, and let God do what only God can do. Turn your cross into resurrection.